Hello everybody, mics are on, everything's set to go. Today is car quiz today, and I'll see you guys in just a second. And action. Okay, so we're back. I'm sitting inside a vehicle with the 4-speed, notice, TAC 4-speed 57, and the quiz today had to do with Muncie 4-speeds, and specifically the M20, M21, and M22, and how to tell them apart. There's a lot of misinformation out there, or I don't know if it's misinformation as much as it is legendary, I don't know, what's the word, like common knowledge. The common knowledge about them out in the hot rod group is not necessarily clear. So let's clear some of this stuff up. But first of all, let's go through your answers. Let's see, let me find someone here. Here we go. Big Block Kings says something about ring or rings on the output shaft, and some had studs and bolts. Others had a bolt in the arms for the arms that connects the linkage. Other than that, all I know about is when you get across a rhino with an elephino. Funny. Good job. All right, Gorney. The rings is true. And not just rings on Muncie's, ironically. A lot of transmissions identify the input shaft gear ratios by what rings they are. Let's see. Early stud mount shift arms for sure M20. This is Left 4 Dead Garage. Okay, without Mr. Google. Early stud mounted shift arms for sure M20. No clue on dead visual ID of an M21. But M22 will have a 32 spline output shaft and should have a 27 spline input shaft. But I've heard some of the 10-foot spline input. I have none of the gear ratios memorized. This is what I'm talking about. I always thought the same thing. Not true. I'm gonna hold on, I gotta put my hat on because my hair is blowing around. This is getting redonkulous. All right, here we go. We'll go through it. Empty Pockets James says, I cannot answer the 4-speed question. I'm refusing to Google my answers. As you know, you get your answers straight from personal experiences. Raised by a single mom, I've always felt my knowledge is limited to whatever I discovered over my years on Earth. Like my passion for Tri-5s did not come until I was a junior in high school. And I was set back a year and old enough to drive in school, but that's the way it was in 55 and a complete, wow. He had a kid in high school that drove to school in competition Orange 55. That's awesome. I don't think your knowledge is mediocre. This is going to be a long answer, Brian Kinnear says. Wide ratio versus close ratio refers to the difference in gear ratios in a 4-speed. First to second, second to third, third to fourth. All fourth gears are the same 1-to-1. Correct. M20 is wide ratio transmission gear ratios. 2.5 to 1 first, 1.9 to 1 second, 1.5 to 1 third, and 1 to 1 fourth. Correct. M21 and M22 both are close ratio transmissions with the same gear split. 220 first, 1.6 second, 1.20 third, and 1 to 1 fourth. The M22 uses straight cut gears made of stronger steel. You identify each transmission based on the last character of the part code stamped on the case. A is an M20, B is M21, and C is M22. Now I know what makes M22 so desirable. Now you know what makes M22 so desirable for hot rodders. Back in high school, in 1974, a friend of his had a 68 Camaro with a 427, a 4-barrel, and 4-speed. Perfect combination. The original owner had done the motor tranny upgrade and had no idea what he really had. My buddy got it, and it was really good price. After driving it hard for summer, the passenger door would pop open whenever he launched hard at a stoplight. This is before subframe connectors. His girlfriend got really upset about it, so he bolted the door shut, which would make sense. I think that's completely valid. This was long before subframe connectors. His solution was a very crude 6-point roll bar with a main hoop behind the seats, like this one. Bars from the main frame at the base of the front and rear fenders on each side. All you saw was the hoop. Made some difference, but it was twisted. But still twisted when he wanted. Kept it for another summer and always sold it. As always, be safe and stay well. Aloha. Aloha to you and the girls, Brian. Cool video, different stuff, Diablo Speed says. Thanks, buddy. Speaking of Marty Stouffer, Iron Horse Garage says, you kind of resemble him. Haha, I would say the M22 is an overdrive, not sure. I told you before I won't Google the answers because I feel like that's cheating. So you'll have to educate me. I will, and it's obviously you are a Mopar guy. I really don't know much about Tri-5s other than no seatbelts and the steel dash is kind of scary. Half-ass garage. That's correct. They actually have a pad dash. It looks exactly the same as this, but it's padded. Hard to tell them apart unless you touch it. If they're done right. Playing with Horsepower says SD card when on vacation. LOL. I don't Google, so I'll sit off to the side and not comment. Ha ha ha. I'm pretty sure you probably know. Okay, let's get into this. There are some charts I'll put up to help you identify. And I'll put pictures of my actual Muncie because I had it out of the car again. So you guys know I changed the rear differential 3 times. Gear ratio splits. 355s first. It was a weak posi. I went to 411s with a posi, and then finally to 3.0s with a posi. But this transmission is an M21, and it is a close ratio. So my first gear is 220. I wish I had the 254 first gear because it would be easier to get out of the hole with the higher numerical number, lower gear. And so it'd be easier to get out of the hole, and then I would have a wider split. That's why they called them a wide ratio, because like your gear splits were wider versus close. This with 411s was like first, second, third, fourth before I got across an intersection. And a wide ratio would be with high gears is first, second, and drive around town most time in second with a 3.0 gear, third, and then fourth. It would just be easier. And they put that in a lot of stuff. And I think HG, your Impala has an M20. I think you have, because you have a fairly high rear gear, probably a 336 or something, and the low 250 first gear, which I would really like to change this change this gear set. Okay, here's how you tell them apart. So, depending on the case model number, this case model number, if you look at the picture, the last digits on it are 660. Which is a later model Muncie. Later meaning 68, 69, 70, and on. And then there's like earlier models. This has the big 1-inch cluster shaft. You can tell that really fast by looking at the front of the tranny. There's a big 1-inch cluster shaft, or the other ones were 7/8. The ring on this input shaft, if you look at it, is one single ring. So I know that by the case number, for the year that they manufactured it, I know that it is, by the input spline and output spline, I know that it is a 1 ring, and I know that the year and the case model number, this is an M21. The digits I show you on this side, mine is actually P, which is for the plant from Muncie. It's P, all of them start with P. That's Muncie. The next number is an 8, which is the year, the last digit of the year, so 1968. And then R would be October. There's a whole bunch of letters that they didn't use for designations of months during the year, but mine is in October, and then the day, which is 25 or 26. So mine was made on like the last half of 68 in October, which would have made it in a 1969 car. Ironically, if you look at the chart, you will see that there were close and wide ratio, fine and coarse spline all the way through, depending on what you had. If this had no input, no rings on the input shaft, it could be a M20. It would be an M22, even with the small output shaft and a 10 spline front for this year. Yeah, I always thought it was the bigger one around. For this year, in this case, if it was an M20, it would have the fine spline and also no rings, but it would have a big tail shaft and fine splines. That would be an M20 for this year in this case. So that's how you figure it up, is case model. The date range helps you figure out and your gear ratio or your case, and then your the rings on the spline will help you. But there was 10 spline and 26, fine and coarse spline input shafts, and big and small. A little story about that. My buddy George, he and I both, for years, I thought it was the big output turbo 400 style 32 spline output shaft, because the turbo 350 and most Muncies and Power Glides are 27 spline output. I always thought the big output shaft was the quick identifier of an M22, and so did he. And so he bought several, and then came home and found out that they weren't, they were M20s. In fact, none of the big spline ones that he has are M22s. His M22s that he has, he bought an M20, he thought it was an M20 because it didn't have a ring on it, and he bought that transmission from a guy with a car and some parts, and it ended up being an M22 with the no spline, coarse input, depending on the case, and the output shaft. Now, it's not, they weren't straight cut, they were straighter cut. I believe these are, and I'll put it up here in a note. The M21 and M20, I think, are 30 degree, something like that, pitch on the gear. And the 22 is a 17 degree pitch, or 20 degree. It's just tighter pitched. So it does howl because they're straighter cut. Are they necessarily made out of tougher steel? That also is a rumor. The gear sets are made out of the same stuff. The cluster shaft and the synchros and all that stuff, that's the big kicker, is the big size cluster shaft, and then everything else that was in there. They do have issues like studs, and there's all those other identifiers that you guys brought up, which are all true. But that is it. So I'll put these charts up in this so you guys can get an education of what actually is real. And I'll have the pictures up of my transmission so you can identify what you're looking for. As far as the A, B, and C denoting the transmission, this is not on this case. I couldn't find it on this case. But this case does have a VIN number, so I could match it up to the vehicle that the transmission was actually in. Wouldn't it be interesting if it was in like a 396 69 Chevelle or something, or who knows what. It was probably in who knows what. Statistically, the wide ratio stuff was higher geared, lower horsepower motor, 4-speed cars. And then the close ratio stuff was lower geared, more performance engines. But you can get an M22, all M21s, M22s. And what that actually means is the M and the 20 and the 22, that was the RPO code that was on your build sheet. Just like LS6 was the designation for 450 horse 454, or L79 was the 365 horse 327, or L31 I think is like the center bolt valve cover 87 to 90 something Chevy truck 350 with the throttle body. Those are L31s or whatever. All that kind of stuff. That's how you just denoted what you had. And like front and rear sway bars for a Chevelle was an F41. M20 would have been wide ratio 4-speed from Muncie. M21 would have been wide or close ratio. M22 would have been close ratio, but that was just on your build sheet. Okay, that is what we know about Muncies and stuff. There's a lot more little nuances and details we can get into, but for car quiz stuff, you guys did pretty good. All of you get gold stars. For the most part, most of you have lava lamps. Hit me up after class if you don't, and we need to figure out how to get you one, because you need one in your shop. Be a lot cooler if you did. What movie's that from? Hey man, you got a joint? Be a lot cooler if you did. Anyway, okay. We should do some Ford stuff. I have a thing for Ford FE motors. Car quiz today question for me is I want to know what the Ford FE actually stands for, and the engine series they're talking about, and what engines are actually in that FE series. What did it start with, cubic inches, and what did it end with, cubic inches, and what vehicles, were there any cool options in those engines? And were there any specialty in vehicles that those engines actually went in? That'll be fun little extra credit for you guys. But anyway, that's it for Car Quiz today. Let's get on it, and then you're going to be seeing some more driving videos of this. I'll put up a couple pictures of surfing and stuff. I'm working on the intro. Anyway, it's going to be kind of fun. I still got to pick a road to drive around. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Well, it's Monday, so I mean, the worst is over yet, right? The weekend's over, and the worst part of the week is already upon you because it is Monday. And yeah, way over there in the shop's a lava lamp. All right, aloha everybody. Love you. Can't wait to hang out with you.